Hey TV fans, Bored Now back with you. On this video I'm going to be reviewing Poker Face Season 1 Episode 5. It is called Time of the Monkey. Full spoilers once again. So halfway through the first season, and I believe there is going to be a second season from what I hear. So that's good stuff because I'm really enjoying this fun little show. So this time, Charlie is working at an old people's home or a home for people with disabilities, and it follows two women who have known each other since like the 70s. They were like hippies together. So you've got Joyce and you've got Irene, and one of them, because I can't really remember which is which, but one of them is played by an actress who's very familiar. She appeared in Law and Order. That's mostly what I know her for, but I've definitely seen her in other stuff. So she's one of the guest stars this time. So we follow them. They are like rebellious. They like to wind up other people at the home, and generally they're like unsociable because on the day of the incident for this episode, like they're going on like a trip to the zoo and they're being all like antisocial when it comes to that. They're disrupting things. But a guy arrives at the home at one point and they immediately have a reaction to him. And they've got this great line about, yeah, you know what we have to do, right? And it's like, yeah, we're going to have to fucking kill him. And I think that's like in a later scene. So we see later on this elaborate plan to kill him, which is really hilarious and elaborate. And this episode is good because of the way it leans into like the farcical nature, just how over the top and at times unbelievable like their antics are and their plan, because it's before they're about to go to the zoo. So one of them asks for the toilet right before, and the other one like distracts people, like keeps them away from the door and keeps like making excuses. So meanwhile, the one who's been crippled, who's in a wheelchair, who I think was Irene, pretty sure it was Irene, she goes out the toilet window and starts climbing up the wall, even though she's a cripple, but okay. This had me thinking like if she like was faking it partly, or maybe exaggerating her injury, but we do find out later that she lost both legs, so maybe not. But maybe over the years she has just learned, to be very like agile and strong and like actually do stuff even despite having no legs. But whatever the case, she crawls out the window and climbs up the wall. And she goes into the room of this guy and injects him and kills him. But the plan doesn't end there, because they both then go off to the zoo. On the trip, they peel away from the group. And because they've got like the heart rate monitor, and they make it look as though this guy's had a heart attack at the moment, even though he's been dead for a while, ever since they killed him. And that's the whole plan, like to cover their tracks. And as I said, Charlie works at this place, and at first she befriends them, and they start giving her information about their lives, and they start hanging out. And like one of the gags is that everybody else at this home really hates these two, but Charlie of course is the one who gets on with them and enjoys their stories from like the 70s. And they open up to her, and what's clever about this episode is then there's certain gaps that they leave, and there's certain scenes where you only see a part of the scene, and then they jump to like the next scene, and it's the small details that actually swerve you, like in those cases, because when the guy first arrived at the home and they had that reaction to him, I expected then it was going to be like one of their ex-husbands. I mean, maybe both of theirs, like an ex-husband, and that they'd had some bad history with him, so that's why they wanted to kill him. And I wasn't actually that far off from who it was, because it turns out it's one of Irene's former boyfriends, and they tell Charlie this really sad story actually about when they were doing like a protest in the 70s, and the police raided the place, and that's how Irene lost her legs. She lost it in like the whole incident, like an explosion. But he went missing. His name was Gabriel. He went missing, and they never saw him again. So after a while, they just assumed he was dead because like the police took him in. And that's kind of the whole story. They talk about how they were all in a group together called like, I think it was called like Drippy Who, something like that, which is a pretty funny name. And there's this whole thing about I never forget, they say at one point. So it turns out Gabriel is this guy who shows up at the home, except he's now going by the name, I think it was Bob, but like a different name, like as part of his cover. And it turns out he's being watched by this FBI guy who shows up with him and pretends that he's actually like his nephew. And that's another fun gag, because when Charlie goes to the funeral later and he's there, she's winding him up, like claiming, yeah, what is he to you, like a sugar, like uncle or something? It's like, no, I'm just a regular nephew. But so we find out it's this guy, and actually when she tells him about Joyce and Irene being there, he like goes and arrests them and asks them questions over what they were doing in the 70s, which probably the gag of the episode is the stuff about like the fake UN, which model UN, which they were gonna blow up, and Charlie's reaction to that is like, is that worse than the real UN? Like trying to blow that up, I'm not sure. And in the end, they let them go, but it's like a good swerve, because like you don't know exactly who the guy is at first, who they're gonna kill, and once it's revealed who it is, because at first they're happy, like they're happy to see him, so it's actually a clever cut where they've missed out a part, and then you eventually get to the part where they decide to kill him. And the reason they decide to kill him is because he admits to them then it was him who knocked them out to the cops, so he gave them up. And so that's like a nice little twist in the middle of it, and they pretend to forgive him, but of course they don't forgive him, and they end up killing him. And Charlie once again ends up starting to find things out, and just the way she pieces things together is once again really funny, because you've got different characters around this home. So you've got like Pervy Pete, who has the line at one point, I would never tell a girl to stop sucking, and that's just like Charlie doing like the hoovering basically. And so at one point she actually uses his advice, like, which is to do with like sexual things, because it's to do with them making like sexual sounds at like the zoo, and then you've got, she gets information off Betty, who's like the woman who runs the place, who tells them about what they did. she gets like advice off these three ladies who are obsessed with like law shows, and like they give her tips and reveal like about the sodium, like the gardening stuff. I forget the actual name now, but it's the stuff which can be used, which wouldn't show up at an autopsy. So there's lots of different fun bits of the way she pieces everything together with the help, and this is one of the ones where it's like really going over the top with some of that stuff, and her trying to convince the FBI guy that she's got them is funny as well, because you just get like these different reactions when he's in the car, and he's got like some sort of an ex-con with him as well who's like reacting to this stuff. But eventually we get like a really funny showdown with Charlie and Irene and Joyce, because they just have this really cartoony, entertaining fight where they're using different things like bedpans and different things like there's spray at one point, or talcum powder. It's really, and it's like Joyce has got the line, "That's how we do it. That's how we did it in Bedford, bitch." And it's just a form fight, and in the end Charlie outsmarts them because she like shocks herself with like a taser, and that alerts the FBI, and they come in and like arrest them. But there's almost another sting in the tail, because it turns out they've booby-trapped her cart, which she has for the job. And so that blows up, and she's able to dive out the way right before the end, or right before it gets her, and flips them off. So that's really good stuff as they're like being driven away by the cops. So yeah, fun stuff once again. I enjoyed this one. There were a couple of nice touches that made it like just one of the most clever ones I think so far. And also Joyce and Irene were really good value, I feel, as well. So that's Poker Face once again. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.